Cary Grant. Cary Grant was the embodiment of Hollywood charm, but behind the polished exterior was a man on a relentless search for meaning. Raised in the Anglican faith, he adhered to tradition early in life, but as the pressures of fame and personal turmoil mounted, he found himself drawn to unconventional spiritual paths. By the 1950s, Grant had distanced himself from Christianity, instead immersing himself in transcendental meditation and Eastern mysticism. His fascination with self-discovery led him to the teachings of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the same spiritual leader who later influenced the Beatles. But perhaps the most shocking element of Grant's spiritual journey was his embrace of LSD therapy. At a time when psychedelic substances were largely taboo, Grant openly credited his experiences with the substance for transforming his outlook on life. He described it as a gateway to self-awareness, a tool that stripped away his Hollywood persona and forced him to confront his true self. His multiple marriages and turbulent relationships only deepened his need for inner peace, pushing him further into alternative spiritual practices. Despite never publicly declaring allegiance to any one belief system, Grant often spoke about the importance of self-reflection and personal growth, ideas that stood in stark contrast to the smooth, effortless confidence he projected on screen. In private, he wrestled with existential questions, seeking answers in places few of his contemporaries dared to explore. His journey was not just about finding peace, but about dismantling the illusion of Cary Grant himself. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo was a woman of contradictions, an icon who captivated the world yet spent her life retreating from it. Born into a Lutheran family in Sweden, she was raised with traditional Christian values, but as she grew older, her spiritual path took a far more enigmatic turn. Despite her silence on religion, those close to her whispered of a fascination with Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism. She was known to spend hours in solitude, poring over spiritual texts, searching for something beyond fame and fortune. Some even claim she practiced meditation long before it became popular in the West, embracing the stillness that Hollywood could never offer. Her letters, many of which surfaced after her passing, reveal a mind tormented by existential questions. She wrestled with faith, purpose, and the fleeting nature of success. One letter, written in the late 1930s, hints at the turmoil that led to her sudden departure from Hollywood. "I have seen everything, and yet I understand nothing." This internal struggle may have been the true reason she walked away at the height of her career, vanishing from the silver screen as mysteriously as she had arrived. Even in her final years, Garbo's spiritual beliefs remained a puzzle. Some biographers speculate that she never fully abandoned her Lutheran roots, while others insist she found solace in Buddhist teachings. What is certain is that she never sought to explain herself. In a world obsessed with her, she chose silence. And in that silence, she became immortal. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart was a man who played by his own rules, on screen and off. Raised in an Episcopalian household, he quickly rejected organized religion, seeing it as restrictive and hypocritical. By the time he reached adulthood, he was a staunch atheist, a rarity in mid-century Hollywood, where faith wasn't just personal, it was political. While many stars publicly aligned with religious institutions to maintain their image, Bogart had no interest in playing along. He openly criticized religious dogma, believing morality came from within, not from doctrine. His views were even more striking considering his marriage to Lauren Bacall, a devout Catholic. Hollywood marriages often bent for faith, with conversions being common, but Bogart refused. He respected Bacall's beliefs but never wavered in his own. Even as their wedding followed Catholic traditions, he remained steadfastly secular. Bogart's skepticism extended beyond religion. He dismissed the idea of an afterlife entirely. In a time when even the most rebellious stars maintained some spiritual ambiguity, he was blunt. "I believe in nothing beyond this life." That kind of statement was practically unheard of in Golden Age Hollywood, where belief in heaven and hell was the norm. But Bogart never cared about fitting in. He lived by his own code, one that didn't rely on divine judgment, only personal integrity. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was never one to blindly follow the rules, on screen or in life. Raised in a strict Baptist household, she was taught to believe in an all-powerful God. But as she faced betrayal, heartbreak, and professional sabotage, those beliefs began to crack. Her first marriage to Harmon Nelson ended in the early 1930s, reportedly due to financial strain and Davis's rising fame. But it was the devastating loss of her second husband, Arthur Farnsworth, in 1943 that truly shook her faith. Farnsworth collapsed mysteriously on a Hollywood street and later passed away from a skull fracture, leaving Davis searching for meaning in the tragedy. Some whispered that his death was more than an accident, fueling speculation that haunted her for years. As her career soared, her personal life unraveled. 3 more failed marriages followed, each one leaving her more disillusioned. She openly questioned the rigid doctrines she had been raised with, wondering how a just God could allow such suffering. In the 1950s, she turned to Christian Science, drawn to its teachings on healing and spiritual power. But even that couldn't fully satisfy her. She dabbled in various spiritual movements, seeking answers in alternative faiths and esoteric philosophies. Some believe she even consulted psychics and mediums, desperate for guidance as Hollywood's golden age faded and her career hit turbulence. Despite her skepticism, Davis never abandoned the idea of a higher power. She once admitted in an interview that she prayed, even if she wasn't sure who was listening. In her later years, as illness and betrayal, especially from her daughter Bede Hyman, took their toll, she clung to the hope that something greater existed beyond the chaos of life. But she never fully embraced any one religion, remaining a seeker until the very end. Her journey was not one of blind devotion, but of relentless questioning, a trait that made her as formidable in faith as she was on the silver screen. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin's relationship with faith was anything but simple. Born into poverty in late 19th century London, he was baptized in the Anglican Church, but religion offered little comfort during his harsh childhood. His father, an alcoholic performer, abandoned the family, and his mother, struggling with mental illness, was institutionalized. Chaplin spent years in workhouses and orphanages, many run by religious institutions that preached charity but provided little relief. This early disillusionment shaped his lifelong skepticism. As he rose to fame in the early 20th century, he became a vocal critic of organized religion, often mocking its hypocrisy. In his 1940 film The Great Dictator, he delivered a powerful speech on human unity, emphasizing kindness over dogma. He identified as an agnostic, yet he was deeply drawn to spiritual and philosophical texts, frequently reading works by thinkers like Schopenhauer and Spinoza. His films, while critical of religious institutions, often carried profound moral messages, championing compassion, dignity, and resilience. Despite his rejection of traditional faith, Chaplin's belief in humanistic values was undeniable. He saw kindness as the greatest virtue, a theme that echoed throughout his work. Even in his later years, as he faced exile from the United States during the Red Scare, he never wavered in his critique of religious and political oppression. Chaplin's complex relationship with faith remains a subject of fascination, revealing a man who rejected dogma but never lost faith in humanity itself. Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was never one to follow the crowd, and that included her views on religion. While Hollywood's golden age was filled with stars who publicly embraced faith, whether out of genuine belief or to maintain their image, Hepburn made no such concessions. She was raised in a progressive, free-thinking household where questioning tradition wasn't just allowed, it was encouraged. Unlike many of her contemporaries, she never felt the need to conform to religious expectations. Instead, she was refreshingly blunt about her beliefs, once stating, "I'm an atheist, and that's it." In an era when publicly rejecting religion could end a career, Hepburn's candor was almost unheard of. But for her, faith, or the lack of it, was a deeply personal matter, and she saw no reason to pretend otherwise. Her atheism wasn't just a belief, it shaped everything about her, That fierce independence she exuded on screen, it wasn't an act. Hepburn lived by her own rules, refusing to be bound by societal norms, whether in her career, her relationships, or her worldview. She admired conviction in others, even religious figures, but she never wavered in her secular stance. Some might have seen this as defiance, but for Hepburn, it was simply honesty. She didn't need divine guidance to shape her morals or her choices. Her guiding principle was always the same: live authentically with no apologies. And in an industry that often demanded conformity, that made her truly revolutionary. Cecil B. DeMille. Cecil B. DeMille wasn't just a filmmaker. He was a preacher with a camera. A devout Episcopalian, he saw Hollywood as a pulpit and believed it had a moral duty to promote faith-based values. His most famous sermon? The Ten Commandments in 1956, a biblical epic so grand it became one of the highest-grossing films of its time. But while DeMille championed religious themes on screen, behind the scenes, he was anything but saintly. He was ruthless in business, crushing rivals and enforcing his vision with an iron fist. Some whispered that his devotion was more about box office success than true faith. Yet, whether sincere or strategic, his influence reshaped Hollywood's portrayal of Christianity, setting a standard that still echoes in faith-based films today. His clashes with secular filmmakers were legendary. He saw them as corrupting forces. They saw him as a zealot. But love him or hate him, DeMille's legacy is undeniable. His films didn't just tell stories. They shaped the way millions visualized faith, morality, and biblical history. And in an industry that constantly reinvents itself, his impact refuses to fade. Mae West. Mae West built her career on sharp wit and unapologetic sensuality, but behind the diamonds and double entendres was a woman deeply fascinated by the unseen world. She wasn't just a believer in reincarnation. She claimed to have lived past lives and possessed psychic abilities. In interviews, she spoke of visions and premonitions, insisting she had an unexplainable connection to forces beyond the physical. Raised Catholic, West rejected rigid doctrine in favor of a more personal spirituality, one influenced by mysticism and the occult. She often consulted psychics, including famed astrologer Evangeline Adams, who reportedly told her she was destined for greatness long before Hollywood knew her name. West took these readings seriously, incorporating spiritual themes into her philosophy and even her work. She believed in the power of energy, attraction, and intuition, concepts that would later be echoed in modern spiritual movements. Some reports even suggest she practiced automatic writing, claiming that certain ideas for her scripts and performances came to her from beyond. Despite her provocative public persona, West's private beliefs were anything but conventional. She was convinced that her success wasn't just talent and timing, it was destiny, guided by unseen hands. And whether or not she truly had psychic abilities, one thing is certain: Mae West always knew how to keep the world watching. James Cagney. James Cagney built his career playing gangsters, but behind the scenes, his moral compass was shaped by something far more traditional: his Irish Catholic upbringing. Raised in a devout household, he was steeped in the faith from an early age, attending Catholic schools and absorbing the strict moral teachings of the Church. But as he grew older, cracks began to form in his unquestioning belief. He wrestled with certain doctrines, particularly the rigid dogma that left little room for personal interpretation. Despite this, he never abandoned his belief in God or the ethical foundation instilled in him as a child. In fact, those values stayed with him even as he portrayed ruthless criminals on screen. Off-camera, he was known for his integrity, refusing to let Hollywood's cutthroat nature compromise his principles. While he distanced himself from organized religion, he remained deeply spiritual, often reflecting on the moral lessons of his youth. In his later years, Cagney withdrew from the spotlight, retreating to his farm in upstate New York, where he embraced a quieter, more introspective life. Some speculate that this retreat was, in part, a way to reconcile his evolving beliefs with the faith that had once defined him. Though he had doubts, one thing remained constant: his commitment to living by a strict personal code, one that echoed the values instilled in him long before he ever set foot in Hollywood. Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow was Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, but behind the platinum curls and dazzling smile was a woman trapped by faith and fear. Raised in a strict Christian Science household, Harlow was taught to rely on prayer rather than doctors, a belief instilled by her mother, who saw medicine as a betrayal of divine healing. This devotion to faith would prove devastating. When Harlow fell ill in early June of 1937, her mother refused medical intervention, insisting that prayer alone would restore her health. But as Harlow's condition worsened, even she began to question the faith that had shaped her life. By the time doctors were finally called, it was too late. She passed away on June 7, 1937, at just 26 years old. The official cause was kidney failure, but many believe her mother's refusal to seek timely treatment sealed her fate. Her tragic end sent shockwaves through Hollywood, sparking debates about religious extremism in an industry that often blurred the lines between faith and fanaticism. Some whispered that Harlow herself had begun to reject Christian Science in her final days, desperate for medical help her mother had long denied. Others speculated that years of untreated illnesses and stress had slowly worn her down. What's undeniable is that Hollywood lost one of its brightest stars far too soon, leaving behind a haunting question. Had she been allowed to seek proper care? Could Jean Harlow's story have ended differently? Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn never played by the rules, on screen or off. While Hollywood's golden age was filled with carefully curated images of morality, Flynn laughed in the face of convention. Raised in a nominally Christian household, he quickly shed any pretense of faith as he embraced a life of excess. He was an outspoken atheist, often mocking religious beliefs in private conversations. Friends recalled how he would scoff at the idea of an afterlife, dismissing it as a fairy tale for the weak. But his rejection of religion wasn't just about rebellion, it was personal. Flynn's hedonistic lifestyle, filled with scandal, debauchery, and controversy, clashed violently with the moral expectations of the era. Hollywood's elite whispered about his wild parties and reckless behavior, but Flynn never cared. He thrived on the chaos, yet his skepticism deepened in a way even he hadn't expected. During World War II, Flynn worked as a war correspondent, witnessing firsthand the brutality of combat. The horrors he saw, death, destruction, and human suffering on an unimaginable scale, only reinforced his belief that no benevolent higher power could exist. He returned from the war more cynical than ever, convinced that religion was nothing more than a comforting illusion. And yet, despite his lack of faith, Flynn was endlessly fascinated by philosophy. He loved debating religious topics with friends and colleagues, challenging their beliefs with sharp wit and relentless logic. Even those who disagreed with him admitted he was a formidable thinker. Flynn may have rejected religion, but he never stopped questioning the world around him. Olivia de Havilland. Olivia de Havilland's faith wasn't just a quiet belief. It was a force that shaped her life's biggest battles. Raised in an Anglican household, she held on to her Christian values even as Hollywood tested her at every turn. When her rivalry with her sister, Joan Fontaine, became one of the most infamous feuds in film history, de Havilland turned to religion for strength. While Joan often painted Olivia as cold and distant, de Havilland saw their relationship through a different lens, one of patience and divine justice. She believed that in time the truth would prevail, and she refused to let bitterness consume her. But faith wasn't just a personal refuge. It gave her the courage to take on one of the most powerful studios in Hollywood. Warner Brothers had a stranglehold on its stars, locking them into restrictive contracts that could be extended indefinitely as punishment for refusing roles. De Havilland, unwilling to be controlled, fought back. Her landmark lawsuit against the studio was a career risk that could have ended her time in Hollywood, but she believed she was on the side of justice. And she was right. The ruling in her favor shattered the studio system's grip on actors, giving performers more freedom than ever before. She later credited her faith as the foundation of her resilience, saying, "The thing that has helped me the most is my faith. It has given me the strength to carry on." As she grew older, de Havilland's devotion only deepened. She became more involved in religious and charitable organizations, using her platform to advocate for causes she believed in. While some stars of her era faded into obscurity, she remained a respected figure, revered not just for her talent, but for her unwavering principles. Even in her final years, she spoke about the importance of faith in her life, proving that for Olivia de Havilland, belief wasn't just a comfort, it was a source of power. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum never played by the rules, and that included the ones written in the heavens. Raised in a strict Methodist household, he abandoned organized religion early, dismissing it as just another system designed to control. But unlike many Hollywood skeptics, Mitchum didn't just reject faith, he dissected it. He read the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, not as a believer, but as a man hunting for inconsistencies, searching for the cracks in the foundation. He once scoffed, "I don't think I'm an agnostic, I'm an atheist. There's a difference." Yet, those who knew him best saw the contradiction. Mitchum was both dismissive and drawn to the mysteries of existence. His fascination with philosophy led him to deep conversations with theologians, existentialists, and mystics. He could tear apart religious hypocrisy in one breath and then, in a quieter moment, admit he wasn't entirely sure of anything. This internal tug-of-war played out in his films too. He embodied cynicism on screen, the man who had seen too much to believe in fairy tales. Yet there was always a glimmer of something deeper, an unspoken question behind those heavy-lidded eyes. Hollywood, with its parade of public piety and private indulgence, disgusted him. He had no patience for actors who preached morality while living in excess. Once, when a co-star tried to lecture him on faith, he cut them off with a smirk. "I've read the book, have you?" But for all his bravado, there were moments when Mitchum seemed almost wistful, as if he wished he could believe. Perhaps that was the greatest irony of all. He spent a lifetime questioning, yet never found an answer that satisfied him. Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson didn't just chase fame, she chased enlightenment. Raised in a strict Catholic household, she was expected to follow a traditional spiritual path. But Hollywood had other plans. As her career soared, so did her curiosity about the unseen forces shaping her world. She delved into New Thought, a philosophy that preached the power of the mind in shaping reality. Positive thinking, visualization, and holistic healing became her guiding principles, long before they were mainstream. Some called it radical, others called it genius. Swanson didn't care. She was too busy transforming her life. Her obsession with wellness wasn't just a passing phase. She took it to extremes, embracing raw food diets, alternative medicine, and even opening her own health food store in New York City. In an era where Hollywood thrived on excess, Swanson preached discipline and self-control. She believed the body was a temple, and that what you consumed, both physically and mentally, determined your fate. This wasn't just a personal belief, it shaped her career. As she aged, she rejected roles that clashed with her spiritual ideals, turning down lucrative offers in favor of projects that aligned with her evolving consciousness. Yet, despite her unconventional path, she never dismissed her Catholic roots. She respected religious traditions, even as she explored Eastern philosophies and metaphysical teachings. She saw spirituality as a journey, not a destination. But Hollywood wasn't always kind to those who strayed from the norm. Some whispered that she had gone too far, that her beliefs bordered on fanaticism. Others admired her for standing firm in an industry built on illusion. Love her or doubt her, one thing was certain. Gloria Swanson wasn't just a star. She was a seeker. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.